Joseph is actually keeping.
All right, we can hear me? Good, I know how to work one of these. All right, welcome. Before we get started today, for those of you that can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. Please be seated. Don't worry, it happens professionally as well.
There we go. All right. So the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, or MIAC, is a youth organization for high school students who are interested in community service or leadership development and engagement with government affairs. We've hosted candidate forums like these for city council and the mayoral elections, and we're delighted to host a city council candidate forum tonight. If you're a high school student or you know one that's interested in joining MIAC and getting involved with events just like these, you can check out our website. It's at meridiancity.org/MIAC, or you can just Google Meridian City MIAC and it should pull up.
Perfect. All right, the City Council Candidate Forum will begin in just a moment. But before that, I want to thank you all personally for being here. I am very impressed and proud to see my community here and represented, and already I can tell it's going to be a fantastic night. Just seeing the vitality of your guys' faces is very impressive to me, and I'm glad that you're here. Let's quickly go over the format. All candidates will have up to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. After that, our moderator will ask the candidates a series of questions prepared by the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, which is us. All candidates will have up to 2 minutes to answer. If there is enough time, our moderator will ask the candidates questions submitted by the audience. Finally, the candidates will have up to 2 minutes to make closing statements. Those of you who are here in person, you should see a few new note cards placed beneath your seat. During the forum, feel free to write down questions for the candidates on these note cards. Once you've written a question, raise your note card in the air and one of our volunteer runners will come by and pick it up. Those of you who are watching remotely, you can submit your questions through the Zoom link. Just click on View Zoom Link and use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our moderator, Nate Shellman, and from here on, I will pass it to him.
I will defer that applause. Can we please have a big round of applause for MIAC, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, for putting this on. In fact, if you are a member of the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, please stand and be recognized. All right, some housekeeping. If you have a cell phone on you, please check it. Look at it now. Silence it. That means it makes no noise. Pretty please, with a cherry on top. And now a message from the lawyers. The purpose of these candidate forums is to provide an opportunity for voters to learn about the candidates who are seeking public office and to hear directly from these candidates. All the candidates running for city council and the West Ada School Board were invited to participate. The candidate's decision to participate is entirely their own. The candidates' remarks and answers during these forums reflect their own views. These views are not necessarily those of the City of Meridian, the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, or 670 KBOI. The city does not take a position regarding any individual candidate. The candidates you have before you, and this will be the time where you are allowed to make an applause, and this is the only time until I say so otherwise. Candidates, Joe Borton, seat 2. Treg Burnt, seat 4. Adam Nelson, seat 4. Luke Kavanagh, seat 6. And Mike Hahn, seat 6. Candidates, in front of you, there's a gentleman. He has in his lap a sign that says 30 seconds. Can you read that? Good. We know how to work their microphones in case they go over. All right, you have an opening 3-minute remark. We start from left to right. Joe Borton, 3 minutes to you.
Thank you, Nate. And thank you to MIAC for hosting this forum for the city council candidates. As introduced, I am Joe Borton. I've been around the Meridian community for some time. Been married to 27 years to my wife, Sharon, and we've raised our family here. Got a business in downtown Meridian, and both of our boys, now grown up, graduated from high schools here in Meridian. So I first got really engaged in this community about 20 years ago. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Meridian, and surrounded myself with individuals who taught me how to care for a community and some of the responsibility that comes with it. And from that, I was given an opportunity to do just this. Run for city council and have a chance to serve, help make good decisions, listen to the community, and try and make Meridian a good place to raise a family and grow a business. I've had a wonderful time doing it. I take the responsibility extremely seriously. For folks that I visited with here in this room, you know that I consider serving on city council to be one of the most important offices around. It's an immense responsibility when you think about how much what the city does touches your lives, from police and fire service, clean water, your wastewater, your open space, building codes, fire safety. There's just so many instances when your city government impacts your life for better or for worse. That's a big responsibility. I feel that we've been doing a great job here in Meridian for that. And I look forward to the opportunity to continuing to do so in seat number 2. So thanks for coming out.
Treg Burnt, your 3-minute opening statement.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate the opportunity. I'd also like to thank the MIAC group that is here for putting on this event. You guys do a fantastic job. When I did the MIAC forum 4 years ago, you guys did a fantastic job, and I'm so grateful to see the young people in our community engaged in making a difference. It means a lot. Thank you, Nate, for being here as well, emceeing. I'm also grateful to see my wife, Tiffany, in the audience. And a lot of family and friends. So there's some family that is watching from Pocatello this evening too. So thank you so much. So I moved here to Meridian in 2003. I moved here because of a job, and I shortly thereafter, former Mayor Tammy DeVeerd invited me to get involved with numerous committees and commissions. My past experience has been with the Parks and Recreation Commission. I was president of that commission for a while. I served on that commission for 3 or 4 years. I was also appointed to the the Planning and Zoning Commission before I was elected 4 years ago to City Council. So my roots in this community run deep, and there's a reason for it, because I care about Meridian. I care about what Meridian offers, and I care about the direction of where Meridian is going. some things that I like to do. I enjoy fly fishing. In fact, I was talking to Mark Johnson before I got here about our hunts coming up. Love to hunt. We love to go up to the mountains in Tamarack and to ski and to board. I'm a big supporter of the local pickleball community. Give it up, high me in the back row. Community is very important to me, and that's what we do. Because community is so vitally important to any city that you live in. Very grateful for the opportunity to live here. Very grateful for the opportunity to have served you, the citizens of Meridian, the past 4 years. And hopefully we'll learn something about why you want to elect me and keep me in seat 4 going forward. Thank you.
Seat 4, opening remarks. Adam Nelson.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. And again, I'm like everybody else, I want to thank the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council for putting this forum together. First timer, as you all know. My name is Adam Nelson. I'm running for seat 4, and I'm an Idaho native, born in Boise, moved to Meridian in 1995 and started a family. I worked construction trades as a young man. My wife Kelly and I worked hard to provide the stay-at-home mom lifestyle for our children. All of our kids graduated Meridian High School, the last one in 2020, 3 grown children later, and we still choose Meridian. We started our racing business in 2003. Since 2009, we've been running the Meridian Speedway along with a couple of partners through a lease under the Meridian Dairy and Stock Shows. Few reasons why I'm running. First of all, this seat was unopposed as the deadline approached, and I think that every seat should be challenged as a matter of principle. I feel like more citizens should stand up and be involved in our city's future. I also think that regular citizens with different businesses, different business and educational backgrounds should be elected so that the citizens can experience a diverse level experience set. And that's what my, excuse me. I know, odd pause. Anyways, I'm running to put forward a constitutional conservative platform that my supporters expect from a candidate like me. I believe that Meridian citizens and the employees of the businesses of Meridian have the right to freedom that includes personal choice and taking personal responsibility when faced with unlawful mandates of any kind. These are restrictions on our pursuit of happiness. I support responsible growth, fiscal responsibility, transparency. I support Second Amendment and making Meridian a two-way sanctuary. I stand with the men and women in blue. I have some experience, the experience that I have, and I think that I can most draw from if elected to office is basic business 101. Don't spend what you don't have, invest in your business when opportunity provides, and spend what you actually have on essentials. I can work through differing interpretations of a rule book. Even though words can be printed in black and white, there's always someone trying to read into them something that isn't there or isn't intended. Helping our participants at the Speedway understand through discussion and persuasion is a common occurrence, and I think I would be an asset when working for the people of Meridian. I'm a Meridian citizen. I'm not a politician. I got 30 seconds with fancy words or well-written speeches. I'm a common sense guy that speaks up on positions of liberty and freedom, and I want to be able to stand up for you. I'd appreciate your vote November 2nd.
Seat 6, Luke Kavanagh.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks, Mike. Joseph, Audrey, you guys are doing a great job. My now wife, then girlfriend, was the very first government affairs advisor for MIAC, and it's just really cool to see the growth and the development of this program. I also want to thank the mayor for continuing to invest in MIAC. I think it's a great program that serves a tremendous need in our community. So good evening, everyone. My name is Luke Kavanagh. I'm a candidate for City Council seat 6. A little bit about me. I grew up in Meridian. It's my hometown. It's the town that I want to see my one-day grandkids grow up in. I was downtown Meridian's paperboy. And if anybody who knows me knows that it's not uncommon for me to start talking about this community. It's one of my favorite subjects. Meridian's special. And I think that it requires a certain type of leadership. And it's one that I'm really pleased to see so many of you taking a special interest in our community and in these elections. So often local elections get ignored. And they're quite frankly the most important election that we have. We don't land on the 24-hour cable news. You don't get to read about us on Google News alerts. But the decisions that this council makes impacts your lives tremendously. And I take that honor to serve in this capacity, in this community, as a top priority of mine. So a little bit about me. I work for the sister arm of the American Cancer Society. It's called the Cancer Action Network. Every day I get to represent cancer patients, caregivers, and survivors in the halls of government. Aside from my job on city council, it's the most rewarding career I've ever had. I think one of the things that's really important about our leaders too is that they're involved in the community. They serve. We've heard that from many of the folks that have already spoken up tonight. I had the great pleasure of serving on the Meridian Food Bank Board. I have had the distinct pleasure of being on the Learning Lab Board and helping underprivileged individuals learn the power of reading. So why am I serving here? I think it's really important that that you be the type of an elected official that you'd want to elect. Or you serve as the type of elected official you'd want to elect. And so things that are important to me are being really fiscally minded. I know that it's not my tax dollars, it's your tax dollars. And so we're really mindful about how we spend those. One of the things that I'm really proud of is that we pay cash in Meridian. This year, the city council approved 2 new fire stations and a new police station. We paid cash, no debt. As somebody who goes around and meets with other elected officials from around the country, I can tell you that is unique. We are a very fiscally minded community. We're also a community that has been really prosperous because we're a safe community. And so I continue to be a strong advocate for law enforcement. My dad was a retired police officer, and I know the sacrifice our men and women in blue and in the fire service sacrifice to take care of our community. Lastly, I think it's really important to be a very transparent and accessible elected official. So I put my phone number on every card that has my name. I like hearing from the public. I like when you agree with a decision, but I also like engaging you when you disagree with the decision that I've made. The other thing that I'm really proud of too is when it comes to transparency is that we make our checkbook available for the public to see. So if you want to know how much the city of Meridian spent on dog poop bags last year, you can find that out. I'll cut to the chase. We spent a little over $20,000 last year on that. But being accessible, being accountable, I think is what's really, really important. And I think that's what many of the people in Meridian are looking for from their elected officials. Looking forward to hearing the questions and meeting with you all afterwards and answering your individual questions as well. Thanks.
Seat 6, Mike Hahn.
Hi, I'm Mike Hahn, H-O-N, and I'm running for Meridian Council seat number 6. I've been a Treasure Valley resident for over 30 years. I've raised a family here, 2 Broncos and a Ute, so don't hold it against me. I'm a licensed real estate broker, have been for the last 16 years. I've had extensive business development experience in corporate America and as well as a local entrepreneur. I moved here in 1991 and got off the plane and didn't think I was going to stay, but fell in love with this place. And the reason why I'm running is, honestly, I'm just an ordinary citizen like everybody else in this room. I've done well financially. It's been this valley's been really good to me, and it's time for me to give back by serving the will of the people of Meridian. And the areas that I'm going to focus on are family safety, common sense growth, and fiscal responsibility, because they're all interconnected. Family safety and common sense growth really depend on an adequate infrastructure, police, fire, water, sewer, and roads. Since 2017, Meridian has issued over 4,000 apartment permits, and it seems like, Meridian likes to build apartments. So, when you do the research and you look at budget approvals, you ask yourself, well, why did they approve a $14 million phase 2 addition to Discovery Park when, there's only one fire ladder truck in the city of Meridian to address fires in apartments, because fires in apartments are different from fires in single family homes. Also, you start doing the research and there's been a lot of opposition to what they call upzoning, which is basically increasing the density in parcels of land that, were zoned for one thing, but now they're zoned for a higher density. And people move here and they do the research and they base their purchase decisions on, zoning properties, zones of properties that they're next to. And then all of a sudden it's a different zone, right? So, as a private citizen, right, I feel that maybe the Meridian City Council isn't necessarily listening to the citizens of Meridian. I'm beholden to no one except for the citizens of Meridian. I am not endorsed by any builders or realtor associations, even though I am a realtor. So also, I agree with Adam. I think Meridian should be a two-way sanctuary city like Eagle, like Cuna, and like Star. So again, I'm Mike Hahn, H-O-N. I'm running for Meridian City Council seat number 6.
Now to questions. Reminder for the candidates, you will have 2 minutes for your answer for these questions. And we'll start with question number 1. What motivates you to participate in local government despite the many difficulties such a position brings? This question goes to Treg Burnt first.
The reason why I'm so involved is because of my love for this community. I moved, like I said, I moved here in 2003, and I got heavily involved right off the bat with different committees and commissions, and I did that for a reason. I grew up with the mindset of service above self, and that mantra has stuck with me since childhood until now. I feel like in the city of Meridian, we've done a great job managing growth. And as city council president, I believe that the policies that we put forward to this community have been top-notch and excellent with while listening to the needs and wants of our community. So very grateful for you being here this evening, and excited for the dialogue going forward.
Mr. Nelson.
Yes. We the people starts from the ground up, and I just think that regular citizens, when they've put in maybe a half a lifetime of work, whether it's through a job or a business, their family's in a spot where you can afford to take the time to give back. I think that you should. I think we all need to be accountable for the future, for our kids and for this city. And I'm just here to be involved and prove a point that regular folks can have these seats at any time. All you have to do is stand up.
What motivates you to participate in local government despite the many difficulties such a position brings? Mr. Kavanagh.
2 reasons. Gunner and Lincoln, my 2 boys. We call Gunner the Gun Show, Lincoln's Pork Chop. I'm sure Pork Chop's watching on YouTube right now. But those are my boys. And I touched on this when I opened things up. I want them to want to continue to choose to live in Meridian, just like my parents chose to live in Meridian, like I choose to stay living in Meridian. And so, and let's cut to the chase here. It's not that difficult being a local elected official. We get to do really amazing things like build fire stations with ladder trucks and parks. We create opportunity. We create sense of place for our community, a place that we're proud to call home. Again, when I was a kid, Meridian was 5,000 people. We're 125,000 people now. It's because people are choosing to live here. And I want to keep it a great place for them and for their grandkids and their grandkids' grandkids.
Mr. Hahn.
So really 2 things like him, common sense and growth. Meridian's growing like at an unbelievably fast rate. I mean, we're the #1 fastest growing city in Idaho, and seems like everybody wants to move here. And I think, and one of the things that compelled me to jump into the race is we got to tap the brakes a little bit on this growth, because I think that some of our infrastructure is getting taxed. I mean, I'm in real estate, so I should be the one that says, yeah, let's grow as fast as possible, because I make money when we have growth. But even myself as a real estate professional look at this and go, yeah, I think we're growing a little too fast. So I think we got to look at some things before we implode or explode. So that pushes me, that kind of pushed me into doing something and not just remaining a private citizen and complaining. So
What motivates you to participate in local government despite the many difficulties such a position brings? Mr. Borton.
Thank you. That's a great question. I think the answers are great too, quite frankly. I could certainly say my children and Treg's and Mike's and Luke's and Adam's everyone here in this room. When I got involved in this community, and my wife and I realized there's an opportunity to serve, I get a great sense of satisfaction in trying to help facilitate collaboration. I started when our community was much smaller. The challenges are greater now, but the ability to try and bring people together who have different ideas and different viewpoints, all with a common purpose, everyone with a good heart, but they might see things differently, to bring them together to try and come up with collaborative solutions. I've often said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. That gets lost in our community at times, national and state level, much more so. But we have an opportunity every single day in these seats to serve in that manner. And I learn every day. I've been doing this a long time. And I still learn every day, and that fascinates me. My colleagues on the city council are some of the best I've ever served with, extremely intelligent, and I learn every day. I learn from our mayor as well. So that motivates me every day to have that chance to perhaps do something a little better for our city than the day before, make it a little better. We only get one time around, one chance to try and make things better. And I've got an opportunity to do so, and I will not let it pass, and it will not rest. So that's what motivates me.
Our next question. What do you see as Meridian's most serious challenge? And what is your solution for this challenge? Mr. Nelson, you're up first.
Been asked this question a couple of different times, and every time I hear it, I have a different answer or a different challenge. I mean, obviously, we know traffic is a large challenge. There are greater challenges out there, but the one thing that you hear when you talk to people is the traffic lights and the stop lights and all of those things. I'm not 100% certain what the solution to that is, because I don't think from a seat up here that it's 100% in the city council's realm of fixes necessarily. But I think the planning and zoning scenario items, that some of the things that Mike brought up, I think looking at where those high density items are going, I think that's going to impact the future of this traffic. I don't think we're ever going to stop it, but I just think that that's the one thing that regular citizens look at from and I'm going to say non-politically engaged citizens, because there's tons of other topics, but when it comes to just regular folks that come through our doors and our business, that's the one thing they're always talking about. So I would hope to be able to, from this seat, take a look at what some of the alternatives might be, if they are available, and go from there. I'm obviously going to lean on the group that's been dealing with that challenge from day one, but the new guy and the new eyes, that's kind of what we're hoping we can look at some of those items.
Mr. Kavanagh.
Throughout tonight's forum, you're probably going to hear every council member talk about growth at some point or another, because I don't know if you know, Meridian's growing. So this will be my portion where I talk a little bit about growth, particularly related to transportation. When we start talking about city infrastructure, police services, fire services, parks, water, wastewater, the city of Meridian does a great job. The problem is that some of the institutions that we don't have direct involvement in, our schools and our streets and roads, are the ones that are causing us as citizens the greatest amount of pain. And one of the things that I learned 4 years ago when I was out talking to voters was they understood that it wasn't the city's job, but they were hiring us as city council members to solve the problems. And to Joe's point about collaboration, I think that's something that the city of Meridian does really, really well. And when you start talking about collaboration around challenges related to transportation, I think there's a couple of solutions that have come up that I'm really proud of. Number one, the city of Meridian has invested $2.5 million to get right away so that we can get the Linda Road overpass built. Again, that's not something the city of Meridian has any direct involvement with. We're not the transportation network, but we're investing dollars because we've got money in our bank so that we can improve quality of life for all of us. Second thing that I think that we should also do to help slow the impacts related to growth as it relates to public transportation is taking the right of way that's over here in front of the railroad tracks and paving it. And let's let autonomous buses zip up and down the railway corridor, taking riders of choice, people who want to ride public transit, as opposed to relying on people who only choose public transit because that's all they can afford. The more people that we can put on buses, the less impact we're going to have on our interstate and our streets and roads. It also comes to, I think, smart land use decisions. And my opponent talked a lot about the apartments that are in Meridian. Yeah, we do. We have a lot of apartments. We went from none to a bunch. But when you look at what the things I think the city does really well is where we locate them. So you just go around Overland Road between, I don't know, Linder and Meridian. There's a ton of apartments there, but your homes aren't there. We're centrally locating multifamily housing so that they can get easy access to the interstate. And Joseph's given me the wrap it up. So I'll talk more about that later on. Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate it.
What do you see as Meridian's most serious challenge, and what is your solution for this challenge? Mr. Hahn.
Growth. Yes, and that's why I kind of jumped into this race is growth, and are we applying common sense to the growth? And the Meridian City Council has a lot of power in, especially when projects come up for approval, asking for variances, asking for upzones. The Meridian City Council has a lot of power to say yay or nay, right? And I think maybe we should step back a little bit and take a look at some of these projects to see, well, how are they affecting the roads that we apparently, we don't have control over? How are they affecting the schools that, we don't have control over that either, but we do have control over, well, how many units are we going to put out there, and how many more cars and traffic are we going to put on the road? So, that's to me is really number one. So.
There we go. Mr. Borton.
That's all right. Thanks, Nate. I think one of the challenges that we have to stay focused on for sure going forward is purposeful growth. We know we've got great demand for what our community provides for a lot of good reasons. So going forward, the growth has to be purposeful. And by that, I mean having the discipline to adhere to the plans that we've developed. Meridian is guided by long-range, long-term plans that many of you might have participated in, most recently with our community comprehensive plan, And a comprehensive plan guides the entire city of Meridian, not only within its limits, but where our area of impact and where we intend to grow. And through collaborative input from the community, it describes the types of land uses we intend. You'll be surprised perhaps to know that Meridian is less than 60% built. Meridian has planned a large area outside of its city limits through collaboration with our citizens. So having the discipline to be true to our plan, both the comprehensive plan, our consolidated financial plan, these are long-range planning tools that have been adhered to in the past that have made Meridian successful today. We have to have the discipline to have purposeful growth and adherence to these plans, not chase shiny things and not chase the newest thing that comes around, but think long-term. That's our obligation to our citizens.
What do you see as our city's most serious challenge, and what is your solution for this challenge? Mr. Byrne.
My turn. Great. Thank you. Great question. And it's a love fest of growth up here, it sounds like, because you're probably not going to hear anything much different from me. Responsible growth is our number one challenge by far, no questions asked. The solution, somewhat like Mr. Borton talked about, is our comprehensive plan. And this is a document, I wouldn't say it's the gospel, but I will say that it's a living, breathing document that shows us where to grow and how to grow. This document was put forth and agreed upon by citizens just like yourselves. They had input just like you do, and we listened to them. Along with that, our regional partners, we had representatives of Compass and West Ada School District and ACHD, Idaho State University, the Meridian Chamber of Commerce. Sean Evans is in the audience, I can see, had great input on this document along with city staff. By the way, our city staff is the best in the region. They do such a great job doing what they do. We took this document and it's a document that you will see from me going forward, sticking to it 100%. As a city, we've always believed in having growth pay for itself. So we need growth to pay for the city services that you guys have come to expect and to enjoy. Whether it's fire, whether it's police, whether it's wastewater, the water you drink or the water you flush. All right. These are all very important things that you guys, citizens of Meridian, have come to expect a high level of service from us, and that's growth pays for that. So that's it. Thank you.
Next question. How does your experience qualify you to be a city council member? Mr. Kavanagh.
Thanks, Nate. That's an awesome question. I think I bring a diverse background and skill set. Again, not just growing up here, but I was very fortunate in 2008 that I got to be the city's community liaison. It was my job to work with you, the public, about the issues that are important to you. I got to help the youth council. I got to help our faith community. It also allowed me to learn a lot about the city. And when I was elected 8 years ago, I thought I really understood how our city functioned. And I thought I understood about budgeting and land use. And it turned out that I was wrong. I didn't know everything. And kind of get to Council Member Borton's point, we're always learning. So I think that the other piece that really has me stand out to be the right candidate is my availability. So I love talking to folks in the checkout lane, online. A week doesn't go by that I don't get a phone call or an email where somebody's wanting to inquire about the city. Being available, being accessible, and engaged with the voters, with our community has always been my top priority. And I think that's something that has me well prepared to continue to serve.
Mr. Hahn.
What was the
Question. How does your experience qualify you to be a city council member?
So in my years of being an entrepreneur, as well as being in corporate America and mainly focusing in business development, you've got to get people to agree, right? And in order to do that, you've got to figure out people's motivations. And that's one of the skill sets that I have is, you can't close deals. You can't sell stuff. You can't, create agreements and get them signed without understanding the different parties' motivations. And this is understandably, it's government, but just like in the world of business, all organizations are run by people that are motivated by one aspect. And then there's the organizational motivation. So I'm pretty good at kind of getting down to, what makes individuals as well as organizations tick, and utilizing those, the motivations to, make everyone agree to getting a project moving forward or, getting behind a cause. So that's what I bring to the table.
Mr. Borton.
So I have a pretty diverse background. My schooling is economics and law. But I think more important than that is my experience in the community as a downtown business owner, a small business owner, dealing with the good times and bad times in our community, difficult economies and strong economies. I employ Meridian residents. We have struggled and thrived together. I have watched my kids and coached my kids in baseball parks that I saw my predecessors approve and some of my mentors approve. And I saw the impact of that on those families, including mine. And I'm very well aware of the impact that has. We talk about quality of life in Meridian, and we can talk about big things, the big G in growth, but I remember like it was yesterday what it matters or what it means to have a Settlers Park ball field to a family, to be able to coach them. I've seen some amazing things that our public service, public safety folks have done for my family and for others that I know very closely. Our police and fire are the best in the state without exception. And I've seen it on a very personal level. That motivates me, and that gives me the experience to know when it takes 20 or 30 hours to prepare for a long council meeting that might go to 1 a.m, that it's worth it. And that I'm committed to devote the time to make the right decision and grind through everything necessary to make sure that happens, because I know the impact of those decisions on families in our community.
How does your experience qualify you to be a city council member? Mr. Burton.
Thank you, Nate. I think that real experience and real leadership matter, especially in the current conditions that we find ourselves in the city of Meridian. We're growing rapidly, which is a good thing. But it takes real leadership with real experience to make key decisions that affect your lives. I'm also a small business owner. I look at when I'm managing the budget, when we're looking at those big numbers, I rely heavily on my business experience on making budgetary decisions that affect your lives. Like I said earlier, I've been on numerous committees, many commissions. When I started, when I was elected 4 years ago in city council, I had the experience of planning and zoning and land use. Land use is a really complicated, very important aspect of what we do at the local level. And the idea of running for city council or the idea of being an elected official is much different than actually being an elected official and gaining the trust of your community. So currently, I'm also the vice chair of the legislative committee for the Association of Idaho Cities. I sit at that table with state legislators and we talk about these complicated issues. I promise you, you want someone sitting in that seat with experience that knows what's going on and can continue to make decisions that affect Meridian going forward.
Mr. Nelson.
I would note that none of the candidates at this forum had experience as a councilman before they were elected to their first term. I believe that Meridian City is probably the largest business in the city of Meridian. I mean, we've all heard about the infrastructure and the different departments and things go on in the city. So all I'm saying is that this is a large business, but there are people, not just one family is affected in this large business in the city of Meridian. I'd like to be able to partake, offer support. And I think that I could complement the group that is assembled for the next round of the city council.
Our next question. What is the difference in the role of the mayor versus the city council? Mike Hahn.
Wow. Well, to me, it's kind of similar to having a president and his cabinet, right? Mayor has a vision for the city, and the mayor has his staff, but also the city council is also the voice of the people, right? And the city council has to interact with its constituency and bring those concerns to the mayor so that they can kind of dovetail the mayor's vision. And there's the vision, there's the day-to-day, but the vision and what the people want, and kind of formulate a cohesive plan moving forward. So I feel that the mayor has to rely on city council, and also city council in turn also relies on the mayor.
Mr. Borton.
Thank you, Nate. There is reliance, but I do see it a little different. I think a better analogy, quite frankly, is an executive versus a legislative branch. Primary roles of the city council are fiscal and policy, city policy. Fiscal being the primary one. The city council sets the budget. Mayor makes recommendations to the council. And that's a pretty awesome responsibility. It is done and has historically been done collaboratively in Meridian. Former Mayor Tammy DeVeard, who's here somewhere I saw, created a great track record of being collaborative with council, and the seven of us trying to work together on a common goal to help Meridian. But the budget is the city council's. And the second big facet of our legislative role is the policy, in directing policy of the city as a whole. So the day-to-day management of city employees and the day-to-day affairs falls within the mayor under that more executive role. But the legislative activities, ordinances is another good example, all fall within the city council's realm.
Mr. Byrne.
Mr. Showman. I agree with what's been said. I also take it a step further. Mayor, the mayor's office is the executive branch of our city government. City council is the legislative branch of our local government. And just like state level, just like at the federal level, it's very important to have those things separate. All right, for many different reasons. Like Joe said, we handle the budget. That's our number one responsibility, making fiscally smart decisions on behalf of you, our citizens. Number two, I would even take it a step further and say that a lot of what we do has to do with land use. There are a lot of people that want to come before us who have sold their property, who want to develop their property, who want to annex into our city. And we hear their requests and we deliberate and we make decisions. And it's very, very complicated. And that's what the city, one of the roles of the city council does. Third, like Joe mentioned, we had a policy, whatever that might be, and it ranges from A to Z. But most importantly, I believe as a city council, we also have much to do with city services like police and fire and keeping you safe as citizens. But those are the main points between the executive branch and the legislative branch in our city. Thank you, Nate.
There we go. What is the difference in the role of mayor versus city council? Mr. Nelson.
Well, because I'm last or second to last, I think these fine gentlemen have all laid out pretty clearly the difference on the books. I think that being one of those pieces, one of those 6 pieces, offering counsel from a different background or a different diverse scenario and representing the citizens can help maybe point a direction in budgetary items or spending that potentially is not necessarily what maybe the citizens are asking for at the time on the sidewalk versus what's happening in the chamber. So I don't disagree with the role of the mayor and the city council. I just think that sometimes a new piece of information or eyes on that old information is helpful.
Thanks, Nate. Not much left to touch on, but I think there is one important piece, because I think sometimes some people in the public don't necessarily recognize the city council has no authority over staff, right? So the mayor is our CEO, and all of our city employees, our great city employees, report to him. And that's not a role that the city council has. That can be challenging at times, right? Because we rely as council on city staff to help us in the decision-making process. For instance, this week I got a call from a constituent. They're trying to put a reader board at their church, and they're having some issues getting the permits. And so again, I'm not going to call a department director and say, this is what we need to do, but I rely on them to give me advice, understanding, interpreting our code. We have really great planners here at the city of Meridian who are true subject matter experts, and make sure that we as the council have all the information available to us to render decision. But that's not something that we have direct control over, as to this planner does this or that police officer does that. And again, it goes back to being a collaborative leader and working with the mayor and working with our employees.
What is a personal goal you have for Meridian? Mr. Borton.
A simple, measurable one is no debt. We've had success. I think Councilman Kavanagh referenced what we were recently able to fund. It is because council members before us and mayors before us, or before Mayor Simpson, made disciplined decisions, sometimes not popular perhaps, sometimes difficult, but always with a long term in mind. It's the type of discipline I was describing in my earlier comments that yield great benefits for the community long term. That's part of this responsibility for our government to live within its means. And we are wildly successful right now, in large part because of that discipline from those that preceded us. So I'm committed as a measurable goal that's easy to define, to ensure we do everything we can to remain a debt-free city.
Mr. Byrne.
Mr. Showman. I would have to say that one of my top platform priorities is for sure the downtown corridor. If you know anything about me, if you have spent any amount of time talking to me, if you have spent an evening with me and my family, you will know that I don't travel very far from the downtown corridor to eat, to recreate, to do whatever. The downtown corridor is the heartbeat of our city. And if you look at what's happening in the downtown corridor, and all of the new businesses that are coming to downtown, restaurants, bars, retail space, small businesses, they're coming to downtown. They want to work and patronize downtown. There's a reason for it, all right? Because downtown is a new hotspot in the Treasure Valley. I feel with my role as a board member on the Meridian Development Commission that I've played an intricate role in the decision-making processes of what that downtown corridor looks like. When I ran 4 years ago, the downtown corridor, a thriving downtown business community was important to me. And going forward, you'll see that desire in that approach going forward as well.
What is a personal goal you have for Meridian? Mr. Nelson?
Well, the personal goals, the list that has created itself over the last 2 weeks has been interesting, but I would say that taking some time, if elected to seat 4, taking some time to go and review some of the previous ordinances that are on the books, and maybe look for things that aren't necessary any longer, or things that could be repealed to make things a little better, save some money for the citizens. Maybe they're social items, maybe they're monetary items, but I think taking a look at all of the city ordinances is probably something that someone should be well versed in.
Mr. Kavanagh?
For me, it's having Meridian being known as the home of the family wage job, where moms and dads both work only because they want to, not because they have to. Meridian used to be the place where people who lived in Meridian drove to Boise to work. For the first time in our city's history, we have as many people that live in Meridian that travel outside to work as we have individuals who live outside of Meridian that drive to our community for their job. Our economy is changing and it's growing. And I think it's important for local government to be in tune with that, to encourage that, so that we can continue to be that place where if dad wants to stay home and mom works, great. If mom wants to stay home and dad works, that's okay too. Or if both want to work because that's your career plans, that's also okay, but not having to choose to work, for both parents working to be able to afford to live in Meridian.
What is a personal goal you have for Meridian? Mr. Hahn?
Well, is to keep it and make it a family safe environment. That's why people move to Meridian. Also would like to, as we grow and we approve things, is to create more stakeholders, not just, transient folks. So those are the two things that I personally would like.
All right. Our next question. Do you think it's important to have a youth voice in government? You're being watched and listened to. If so, in what ways will you include them? Mr. Byrne?
This is a great question. This is, if I answer anything but the affirmative, I might get tossed out of the place tonight. But with all kidding aside, MIAC and any type of representation that not only MIAC has, but other youth representatives in our commissions, they have a huge and very important voice in the decision-making process that goes on in the city. I'm very grateful for the time spent and for their engagement and for their direction, because I think sometimes, in fact, I would say most times their ideas and their direction is probably more in tune than the adults in most cases. We have what's called participatory budgeting in the city. And we allocate funds toward MIAC to come up with spectacular activities. And they're heavily involved with our local legislators, and they actually have had bills get passed at the state capitol. And I just think that is fantastic. And going forward, I hope to continue to see that with these young people. And I want to thank each and every one of them for being here tonight.
Mr. Nelson,
Could you repeat the question again? So
do you think it's important to have a youth voice in government? If so, in what ways will you include them?
Obviously, we all think it's important. I'm pretty impressed and with the turnout that these guys have all put together, especially this youth advisory panel. I really wish there was more pressure for young folks to get involved like these people do today, back when I was young. So obviously I'm not very eloquent. You guys are conversing with adults all the time, and you're learning skills that some of us don't have, and you're learning those now because you're involved in this youth advisory panel. Obviously, the ideas that you bring to the mayor or to the city council, they're being heard. These people are enjoying hearing them and are impressed with them. So I believe that I believe that yes, we should work with them more often.
Mr. Kavanagh.
Thanks, Nate. Short answer, yes. Of course, we want youth involved. I wish we had MIAC when I was in high school. These youth, they don't just inspire us, they motivate us to do a better job up here. So in addition to the youth council or youth on commissions who have just had a tremendous impact at the city level, something else that's maybe a little different that I've been working on is establishing a youth liaison for the city of Meridian. So this would be a part-time position that their sole job would be to work with high school students as a high schooler. So this would be a job that a high school student could apply for. And why do that? Well, because we've seen the impact of youth's voice at the youth council on our commissions. But when you go and you look at our parks, they're largely geared towards little kids or adult recreation players. We don't necessarily have a lot of amenities for teenagers. We're wrestling right now at the city of Meridian with movie night. That's a very popular teenage attraction, but it brings with it challenges. And we as adults are sitting around saying, how are we going to fix this? How are we going to solve this? Well, I think we need to invite more youth voices into those conversations as well. And I think a youth liaison is the right solution.
Mr. Hahn.
You know, I think what's lacking in public education is, education about civics, right? How does the government work? I think that potentially you could create a program where maybe individual city council members go down to as far as, middle schools and visit with middle schools and kind of explain how city government works, right? Because I don't know if that's done at this point in time, but from middle school through high school, I think there should be a consistent, interaction between city council members and, teachers and who teach civics and in that respect. So that would be what I'd want to do.
Mr. Borton.
Nate, absolutely. It's funny when you ask the question, I think about how and when I first got interested in politics and service in government. And it was in high school here in the Treasure Valley. And we are not far off from having a MIAC graduate run for the Meridian City Council. We've talked about that, and it's coming. It's going to be fantastic. They don't serve here, they'll serve elsewhere. And I think about the answers you hear if you ask Mayor Simison how and when he got the fire lit to serve and to give of himself. And it's back in the high school days. Mayor Tammy's the same way. You find out there's kids in this room, there's kids in MIAC right now who will have the the fire of service lit, and they will give more than they ever get because they had an opportunity to serve. I think MIAC is an exceptional organization to provide that opportunity for young adults in our community. It will pay huge dividends, not only for Meridian, if we're blessed enough to have any of them come run and serve in elected office here, but it'll certainly provide a blessing for any of them, wherever they go, to have a chance to serve. It made a huge impact on my life when I was in high school, having that opportunity. So I wholeheartedly welcome it to continue and to encourage MIAC to do so.
Hey, Nate, just think one thing about MIAC, there has been an elected official elected to public office
Right.
that was that.
You're right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tyler.
Yeah, so Tyler Ricks, who is a library board trustee, is a graduate from MIAC. So just a little heads up on, we actually do have public elected officials who are from this great organization.
Gentlemen, good news, bad news. Good news, we have some fantastic questions. Bad news, we are right now at 28 minutes. Do you all agree to give your next answers in 90 seconds or less?
Yep.
Yes? All right. Good answers. First question. With our residential property taxes skyrocketing, what is your view? What are your plans to help property taxes stay in check? Mr. Nelson.
Right to the fire first, huh? I've written a couple of paragraphs on property taxes and you know, the word freeze comes up, the words tap the brakes comes up, a lot of words come up, but I think the biggest thing to do is to just look at where we're at and where we're at in relation to the rest of the world and make sure that we're not overcharging our citizens on property taxes just because the price of everybody's house has gone through the roof because everybody wants to live here.
Mr. Kavanagh.
90 seconds is going to be hard. Three things. One, it's good governance. So you've got about $30 million right now in unallocated budget surplus dollars. Now's not the right time for the cities to be taking a property tax increase. How do we prolong or how do we prevent property taxes from going up in the future? Two suggestions. One, remove the homeowner's exemption for anyone that moves from out of state for 3 years. So I've got a 14-year-old. We're looking at colleges. There's in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition. But we can apply the same metrics here as well. If you're choosing to move to Meridian, you don't get that homeowner's exemption until you've lived here for 3 years. The other suggestion is to implement a transaction fee at real estate closings. And what does that mean? It means every time a house is bought and sold, a small percentage of that sale or a fee would be added on that would be used to build schools. When you look at, when the Cavanaugh family looks at their property tax bill, it's not city property taxes that are buckling us. It's the amount that we're paying for schools. We're paying for, we've got an assessment plus a bond plus a levy. Those are the things that are impacting the Kavanagh family. And I think that that's an easy solution. Use a transaction fee to build new schools.
Mr. Hahn.
Yeah, if you look at the way your taxes are broken out, you know, the city of Meridian probably levies, you know, their levy on your property is not as much as, you know, all the different bonds, mosquito abatement, library district and all that. So it's a tough call. And I think, you know, from my perspective, when you're in business, you have to look at where you're spending the money so that you don't have to keep grabbing money from the taxpayer. So I would probably look at it from a budgetary perspective, which is even tougher because the city of Meridian spends its money pretty well and is pretty tight, but I think there could be areas of improvement. So
With residential property taxes skyrocketing, what is your view? What are your plans to help property taxes stay in check? Mr. Borton.
Driven with such growth that you have to have the discipline to say no. To encourage growth in some areas and note that we're not able to be everywhere at all times. Say no, even when it's not popular, even when there might be pressure to do otherwise. That's the type of discipline that allows you to be fiscally solvent for years, decades. you want to have an ability to maintain your levels of service and all the things that we cherish in our community, still have growth, you might be confronted with an opportunity where you have to say no in order to protect. That's what's
Mr. Burnt.
Mr. Schauman, grateful for this question. I'll be real quick. Currently, as I said before, I serve as the Vice Chair of the Legislative Committee for the Association of Idaho Cities. So I not only represent Meridian, but I represent every city, which is 199 cities in the entire state, along with the Mayor John Evans of Garden City. All right. Some things that we worked really close with our local elected, our local electeds worked very close with our state elected officials this last legislative session. And some things that we need to work on going forward, for sure. Number one is there's the circuit breaker for sure needs to be tweaked a little bit. Homeowners exemption for sure is too low. And we need to make sure that we create legislation that that exemplifies not necessarily how much your house is worth and how much your house is increasing in value. So we need to work with the different counties to make sure that that growth makes sense and that it works well with those who are on fixed incomes, along with those working professionals in the city of Meridian. And I think that we spoke before, we also just need a more collaborative approach, especially with our state elected officials. And this next legislative session, you'll see that for sure from me.
Next question. How did or would you vote on the sexual orientation gender identity ordinance in Meridian that allows biological males to use women's bathrooms? This question goes first to Mr. Kavanagh.
So if you're referencing the city's non-discrimination ordinance that we passed in 2018, I voted in favor of it.
Mr. Hahn.
Well, as a common sense conservative, I would have voted no. And really the reason for me is I don't think it's the city's place to legislate feelings. Because I've read that ordinance and it's very vague, and it's got some very vague language that could put, you know, a lot of people at risk from a variety of different things. So I would have voted no.
Mr. Borton.
Nate, I would have and did vote yes for it. Just for some brief context, this is an ordinance which many of you might already know, but just last year in 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court in a 6-3 majority issued a ruling that quite frankly made it nationwide right that is afforded in the Bostock case. But nonetheless, the Meridian ordinance is one that it's one of one. It is the most narrowly tailored one in the state of Idaho, albeit perhaps the West. And it is one that we have had collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce and our business community in forming it. And I'm glad to note that since its adoption, we've had 0 complaints provided to the city from anybody. It's not been utilized at all. And I'm pretty proud of our community for that.
Mr. Burnt.
Thank you, Nate. I voted against it.
Okay, Mr. Nelson.
I also would vote no.
Plenty of time, more questions. Very good. What is the line between necessary and unnecessary government? Mr. Hahn.
Wow. What is the line between necessary? You know, I think government is here to provide safety for people. Fire, police, infrastructure. You want water to drink, you want to flush your toilet, you want to drive on safe roads. You know, and, you know, a proper land use. Anything above and beyond that, you know, my feeling is that it's government overreach.
Mr. Borton.
It's a difficult one to define without some context of facts. I think that the best way to describe where that line is drawn is to recognize the reason that local government exists, and it is to provide certain specific core functions. Right? We as a community get together and we collaboratively say, let's work together for law enforcement and police protection. Let's all, pitch in together and provide open space for our community and good fire and public safety. We all benefit from that. How about clean water and wastewater? And some infrastructure that allows all of us to benefit from it. To stay true to those core functions and the reason that cities exist, and to avoid the temptation to stray from that ultimate critical mission, is some of the discipline that's necessary to avoid what can become government overreach. You find at times overreach can exist in other communities incrementally. Again, that's where discipline is necessary to be mindful of the fact that it's easy in 1 year to slide a little away from those core functions. Very mindful of those, and that is one of the paramount focuses every year of our city council to ensure that we stay true to those core purposes.
What is the line between necessary and unnecessary government? Mr. Byrne.
Mr. Shellman, thank you for that question. I think first and foremost, it's really sticking to our values and who we are as a community. We spoke about fiscal, I've spoke about fiscal conservatism, land use, policy-making decisions that really affect our citizens and who we are and what we represent. The first thing that comes to my mind when it comes to unnecessary forms of government is maybe I'm a small business owner. And so I pay close attention to government overreach and making sure that I'm allowed to do business in a lawful way in which I can provide a level of service to those who come to my business. That's just one thing that came to my mind first. But with that said, at the City of Meridian, we've done a great job in creating a business environment where businesses can thrive through our urban renewal districts throughout our city. So those are some things that came to my mind.
Mr. Nelson.
I believe government exists for the protection of the citizens' personal rights and do not impede on the freedoms afforded by the Constitution.
Mr. Kavanagh.
Thank you, Mr. Shellman. So I'm one that kind of believes the government's hand should be the lightest, whether it's in our pocket or in our lives. And so what you've heard tonight is a little bit of a kind of a subjective response. And that's great. I think that's what makes city councils great. It's collaborative leadership. The other area that I really think where government overreach can begin is when it diverts from what it's intended to do, which is provide public safety. So again, police, fire, water, sewer. But then the question comes about also how you maintain your community's values. Parks may be government overreach to some, but I'm really proud of our parks. I'm really proud that we've got a sense of place for our kids and our young people and families to recreate and enjoy themselves. Now, if the private sector did parks, none of us would probably be able to afford to go there. So I think that's an appropriate place. Representing its community's values is the other place. Again, it's going to be subjective, but those are the areas that I think that government is best suited to serve.
We're going to sneak in one more 60-second answer. 60-second answer for the timekeeper. We're going to start off with Mr. Borton. How will you help protect Meridian from the ongoing threat of COVID-19? Yes, I said 60 seconds.
Whole 60 seconds. Boy, that kind of ties into the last question. So that's a tough one. It's not a 60-second answer, but it kind of goes back to that balance between the primary purpose of local municipal government and personal liberties, and recognizing that there's a responsibility not only sitting in this chair to do things and to take action, but also know there are times when you might have to exercise restraint, and individual liberties should win the day and be something that you hold true to. So it's not a city council, quite frankly, that ensures that you're safe from COVID-19. I would defer to scientists, and your individual liberties to make wise decisions to protect your own safety.
Mr. Byrne.
Hey, Shum, that's an impossible answer to me in 30 or 60 seconds. Just real quick, I was part of a group and that I spearheaded keeping Meridian healthy and open for business with the local Meridian Chamber of Commerce. Former Mayor Tammy DeVeard and Tommy Alquist and a couple others got together and we thought of some great ways in which we can create trust and in our local businesses where people felt like they were safe enough to go and patronize and spend money while the COVID pandemic was in full force, and it worked. If you look at the city of Meridian, our economy flourished. Our economic situation in the city of Meridian was absolutely amazing. Our unemployment is so low, and it was because, I think, first and foremost, because we set that standard right off the bat, which other people across across the state mimicked. But most importantly, even above that initiative, I think promoting personal responsibility going forward is key. We've done that as a city. We are doing that as a city, and we'll continue to do so.
Mr. Nelson.
Personal responsibility is 100% the way that I would continue to deal with the COVID-19 topic, right? So all of these citizens, if they have the flu, if they have a cold, if they have a broken leg, they go see their doctor and they deal with their medical issues on their own. I don't believe it's the place for any municipality to be telling folks how they should deal with their own health.
Mr. Kavanagh.
Thanks, Nate. It's an interesting question. I think probably our city council or city councils across the country would have solved the COVID-19 pandemic already if they had the ability to do that. So I don't know what we could do as a body to solve a global pandemic, but I can talk a little bit about some of the things I think that we can do as individuals, and that's encourage personal freedom. And I think the second part is one that we're not very good at right now as Americans, and that's providing grace to those who think differently than us. You can't, as much as people want to talk about COVID-19, everybody else is also talking about the fights that they're getting in with their family and their coworkers and their kids or their grandparents because of a piece of misinformation on social media. We need to embrace grace as a community, as a state, as a country. And I think that's something that I know our current city council is all committed to doing, not just online, but offline as well.
Mr. Hahn.
Yeah, I don't believe in legislating personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is up to you folks. You know, you want to wear a mask, you wear a mask. If you want to get vaccinated, you get vaccinated. There's upsides and downsides to both of those. There's all kinds of facts on social media, on the internet, that is very confusing. But at the end of the day, it's really up to you, and I'm not going to legislate that.
All right, now it is time for our 2-minute closing statements. We start with Mr. Tregburn, seat 4.
Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Nate. And again, thank you to MIAC. Thank you for the citizens that are here viewing this evening, who are here in council chambers, and those who are online watching. I want to say a couple of things, and I truly believe this. It's been my highest honor to serve the city of Meridian as your city councilman. Being council president of the last 2 years has been incredibly important to me, and it's been my highest honor throughout my life. I've met so many good people in the last 4 years, people who care, people who are passionate, Meridianites who are thankful that they live in this city. And, you know, I've been lucky enough to have made long-term friends in the last 4 years, and that will last a lifetime, and I'm so grateful for that. I love Meridian. I love Meridian. And I especially love serving Meridian. It's been, like I said, my highest honor, and I ask for your vote on November 2nd. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for coming this evening.
Closing statement, seat 4, Adam Nelson.
Thanks, Nate. From the beginning of jumping into this race, I've started out by saying I'm not running against an opponent because I'm not running against Treg. I think he's a stand-up guy. He's treated me with the utmost respect since he learned that I was in the running for his seat, which is great. But I personally, I want leaders that aren't afraid to lead by example, speak up on positions of liberty and freedom, be prepared to defend them and the citizens that elected them. That's the type of councilman that I intend to be if elected. So help me God.
Closing statement, seat 6, Luke Kavanagh.
Thanks, Nate. Mayak, Mayor Simpson, thanks for a great event. Thank you all for coming. We've talked a lot tonight, and I hope all of you got your questions answered, but if not, I'll be sticking around afterwards. I want to make sure every question that you came prepared to ask, that you feel like you've got an answer by the time you leave. I want to thank my wife and kids. We don't talk about this, but campaigning's hard. It's stressful. It's long. It's putting up signs. It's knocking doors. And then we go home, and I'm just so lucky to have a great partner and great kids who put up with me, because I can get a little cranky at times. I want to thank our current council. We don't always agree, but we work really well together. It goes back to the point I think I've hit a few times, collaborative leadership. That's what's amazing about local government, is that the best idea always wins. I want to thank my opponent. Adam hit the nail on the head. We are in a time in our city where election shouldn't go uncontested. And I appreciate my opponent trying to raise up issues and engaging in healthy debate. That's important for our community. Again, Meridian wins. And I want to thank you all for when I come knock your door and ask you for your vote. You're engaged, you have issues that are important to you. And I just think that we're very lucky as a city to have just such a remarkable citizenry who really cares about their community the same way we all do as council. And so I thank you all for participating and encourage you to get out the vote on November 2nd.
Seat 6, Mike Hahn.
Yeah, I want to thank MIAC because I think I haven't thanked MIAC yet, right? So I want to thank MIAC and the citizens of Meridian and those of you online, like somewhere, right? You know, as a citizen, I could have just buried my head in the sand and said, you know, I'm just going to continue to do what I do. But, you know, when you do the research and there's things that, you know, the government does, even though the citizens are, you know, against it, whether it's upzoning a property, whether it's passing an ordinance that a lot of people feel that is not right. And, you know, people come to city council and they argue against it, and maybe they're in the majority, but it's done anyway. Then you start thinking, well, you know what, that's a problem. And that's one I want to help fix. You know, where Meridian's going in kind of the right direction, but there needs to be a course correction. Sorry. There needs to be a course correction. And, you know, I've always been a change agent. I've always been an out of the box thinker. And I think I can help the city council and the city correct the course. Again, Mike Hahn, running for Meridian Council seat 6. Vote for me November 2nd. Thank you.
Seat 2, Joe Borton. Closing statement.
Thank you, Nate, and thank you, MIAC, for hosting this forum. I think one of the comments that stuck with me, first and foremost, it's this opportunity to serve, which I appreciate, and the chance to connect with the community and talk about the plans for the next 4 years. Let's talk about what we've accomplished and what we intend to accomplish going forward. But all of you here could have been doing something else tonight, and everyone watching online could have been doing something else. Kind of reminds me of what makes Meridian special. I like seeing a crowd here who, of all the things, chose to come here, chose to hear from some folks you might know and support, and maybe some folks you don't know at all. And I think Luke's comment is probably the most telling one, and it's maybe an ask of you. And he used the word grace. And there's a lot of discord nationally and even in our state. We see it in the media and social media, and we feed into it. I would love your support on November 2nd for seat number 2. I would love the opportunity to serve this community as your city council member. And I ask that we each leave this meeting and go in grace. You'll be asked what you learned tonight. You'll be talking to neighbors and friends and coworkers, family members. And I just ask that you speak about our community with an open mind, that you reach out to us if you have questions or concerns with an open mind. That's how we do things in Meridian, whether you agree or disagree. You can tell how friendly people are to each other up here. That's how we serve in Meridian. I applaud all the candidates, that all of us that are running, for the manner in which they want to serve and the reasons they want to serve. So I appreciate you all taking the time to come out today to listen to us. Amongst the things you can do, and sincerely, I ask that you do go with that in your heart. Keep an open mind, reach out to all of us, and I would love to have your support on November 2nd. Thank you.
Seat 2, Joe Borton. Seat 4, Treg Burnt. Seat 4, Adam Nelson. Seat 4, Luke Kavanagh. Seat 6, Luke Kavanagh. Seat 6, Mike Hahn. Thank you all, gentlemen, for coming out tonight. For our timekeeper, Joseph, thank you very much. Audrey, thank you very much for letting me throw some curveballs at them time-wise. And again, for all of you watching, and for those of you who turned in questions, thank you very much for your active citizenship. Folks, we're going to take a break for just about 15 minutes, but just a round of applause for all the candidates. They're going to be out at the atrium if you want to, in the lobby there, if you want to ask them some more questions, but be back here in about 15 minutes for the West Ada School District Board of Trustees Candidate Forum starting at 7:45. forum here in just about 2 minutes. So consider this your 2-minute warning. It's a football reference. 2 minutes. Okay, it is 7:45, so we are going to get started with the West Ada School Board Trustee Forum. Just one more check of your phones, make sure they are silenced, make sure they don't ring or go off, because we want to make sure all the focus is on the candidates and so they can understand the questions and those at home can hear them answer. Before we get started, we started off the program with the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. We go to the Mayor's Senior Advisory Council. Sandy?
Thank you so much. So good evening and welcome to the Meridian Candidate Forums. My name is Sandy Floyd and I'm with the Meridian Senior Advisory Board, better known as Msap for short. In the middle, well, to start a little bit, let me just talk about what Msap does so you all know at this point. It's in its 6th year. It's made up of seniors from all walks of life, including lifelong Meridian residents and transplants to this beautiful area of ours. Msap has offered classes such as personal safety, internet and identity safety, as well as firearm safety, to just name a few. 2 of the most recent accomplishments are the ADA compliant fishing dock opposite the senior center at Kleiner Park and the outdoor exercise equipment adjacent to that dock. Before we get started with the West Ada School District School Board Candidate Forum, I want to go over the format with you all. The candidates will have up to 3 minutes to make an opening statement. After that, our moderator will ask the candidates a series of questions prepared by the Mayor's Senior Advisory Board. All candidates will have 2 minutes to answer. If there is enough time, our moderator will ask the candidates questions submitted by the audience. Finally, the candidates will have up to 2 minutes to make their closing statements. Those of you who are here in person, you should see a few note cards placed beneath your seat. During the forum, feel free to write down questions for the candidates on these note cards. Once you've written a question, raise your note card into the air, and one of our volunteer runners will come by and pick it up. Those of you who are watching remotely can also submit questions through Zoom. Just go to www.meridiancity.org/live, click on the View with Zoom link, and use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our moderator, Nate Showman from 670 KBLI Radio. And with that, I'll turn things over to you, Nate.
There we go. Thank you very much, Sandy. All right, we've already checked our phones, so once more from the lawyers. The purpose of these candidate forums is to provide an opportunity for voters to learn about the candidates who seek public office and to hear directly from these candidates. All the candidates running for City Council and the West Ada School Board were invited to participate. The candidates' decision to participate is entirely their own. The candidates' remarks and answers during these forums reflect their own views. These views are not necessarily those of the City of Meridian, the Mayor's Senior Advisory Board, Ada County, West Ada School District, or 670 KBOI. The city does not take a position regarding any individual candidate. With that said, please give a hearty welcome to our candidates tonight, Brent Hart for Zone 1 and Anita Beckman for Zone 2. Did I get that right? Is it
Zone 3.
Zone 3? My mistake. Sorry about that. With that all squared away, our opening statements. We're going to start with Anita Beckman.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Anita Beckman, and I am a candidate for Zone 3 for West Ada School Board. Oh, sorry. Thank you. So good evening, everybody. My name is Anita, and I am a candidate for Zone 3 for West Ada School Board. I have never put myself in a position for a civic role, but I am proud to do so. I am a mother of 4. I have a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, 2-year-old, and a 3-week-old. So brand new little baby. But I am also a stakeholder in this community. A little bit about me. My dad was in the Army, so we moved all across the United States. And then I wanted to go into the Air Force after we had moved back to their home state of Minnesota and served in munitions. And that's where I also served in combat plans and training for 6 years. I was honorably discharged in 2007, and that is when I made Idaho my home. And I have been a proud Idahoan for almost 15 years now. My love for education stems from my parents. My dad was an education specialist while he was in civil service. And wherever we moved, my mom was always a substitute teacher. So they ingrained in us from early age and all through high school and even beyond that, the importance of education. When I was in combat plans and training, I developed career plans for airmen. And I believe that this skill set will help me facilitate and better decision-making for the district. I have a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Phoenix. And I also believe that this skill set will help in making informed decisions for the district as far as looking at funding and with my background in accounting, seeing where funds are being allocated to, where needs are, and how to better allocate these funds. I also believe that important decisions are made at the school board level, which is why I chose to run. A school itself is a community. It's a community of its teachers, administrators, staff, and students, and families of students. This includes the community of the school district and the community at large. I believe that they work in concert with one another. And I'm hoping that if I am elected to serve on the school board, that I can help facilitate and bridge these gaps between these communities. Thank you.
Opening statement, Brent Hart.
Thank you, Senior Advisory Board, for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate it. My name is Brent Hart. I am running for the West Ada School Board in Zone 1. I was born and raised in Meridian. I am the product of Meridian Elementary. I am the product of Chief Joseph. I am the product of Meridian Middle School. I am the product of Meridian High School. I've earned my bachelor's and master's degree in psychology and returned to Meridian to raise my family. I also want to thank my mom who's watching my kids right now. I have 4 kiddos, ages 10, 8, 5, and 3. My wife and I are proud to raise our family in this community. And I can't think of a better way to give back to my hometown than to serve in West Ada School Board. I'm running because I really value public education. I know what the difference is it can make for kids and families. And I want to represent Zone 1 as a reasonable voice who believes in solid evidence-based decision-making, makes our schools stronger, attracts and retains great teachers, and gives our students the great education they deserve. As a school board trustee, I bring a background with working with special needs children and adults. I'm a special needs parent myself. I'm also the son of a retired Meridian middle school teacher. And I value the role that great teachers have in education and the role that they play in our kids' lives. I think I have some great ideas to strengthen West Ada's school district, and I'm thankful for the opportunity and to earn your vote tonight.
We go to our first question. If elected, what would be your top 3 priorities? And one more time, the question, if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities? Let's go back to you, Mr. Hart.
I think one of the main priorities I would have is to restore trust in public education. I think there's a lot of distrust in public education right now. I think there's several ways you could solve this. Financial transparency, I think, is very important. These documents are currently available. They're just not always easily digestible. So I think making that a priority so people can see where their money is going. I think students need to be the center of all of what we're doing here. And that means leaving politics as much as we can at the door. Special education is really close to my heart. With being a parent of a kiddo with special needs, there are, I think, things that can be done to support that. And I really would want to, as a member of the board, to be able to dig into that and kind of bring the perspective of a parent of a child with special needs. I also think recruiting and retaining teachers and educational support staff is incredibly important. We've had kind of a chaotic past year and a half. And I think one of the first steps we need to do is to stabilize that. I think we need to increase pay and career paths for educational support staff and classified staff. Find ways to bring teachers to the decision-making table and pay teachers what they deserve, because we are losing teachers to neighboring states.
Once again, the question, if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities? Ms. Beckman.
Thank you. I agree with much of what Mr. Hart has said in regard to rebuilding trust in public education through transparency. I think that a community of well-informed citizens is a much happier community when they have all the information. And I think one of the ways to accomplish that is for school boards to look for ways to institutionalize parent and patron involvement by creating some policymaking input, whether that's through surveys and making those publicly posted so everybody can see the results of those. I think a lot of times we ask for input and we don't really get to see, where it lies, as far as what a community needs and what they really want. And I also believe another priority for me is recruitment and retainability for educator support staff. I think now more than ever, our district is really run thin, especially through the pandemic that we've all been living through. Teachers are working incredibly long hours. We have a rise in students per classroom, mainly because there's been an influx of more community members that have moved to the Boise and Treasure Valley area. I think that we need to look at ways on how to recruit and retain a lot of support staff to help out our teachers, and that way our students have a better education. Another priority of mine is to focus on actual issues in education. I think that we need to communicate with our educators more to find out what they actually need. If there was a wish list, that they had a magic wand, what would they want? And I think that's one way to accomplish that is through communication.
Our next question. What knowledge do you have of the operations of the West Ada School District, and how have you been involved with the district during the past 5 years? Let's stay with you, Ms. Beckman.
I have not been with the West Ada School District for the last 5 years. We have 2 kiddos who are just starting their public school education. We have a first grader and a kindergartner. The way that I've been involved so far is by viewing past board meetings, just seeing what goes on in a day-to-day board meeting and topics that are of concern, and just staying as informed as I can as a parent and a stakeholder in the community.
Mr. Hart.
I think first and foremost is as a parent and as a parent of a special needs child, dealing with his education concerns, dealing with working with his IEP, things of that nature. Have been the primary ways I've been working with school.
If you can go ahead and, yeah, there you go.
Okay. So as a parent and then working with my child's IEP and with the special education departments that he's been involved in.
What is your plan to keep a safe educational environment for students and staff in light of the ongoing pandemic? Mr. Hart.
I do think it's key to make sure we're keeping kiddos in school. I think we do that through what data shows is effective, which is wearing masks. I know that's not the solution that everyone likes, but I know it's a nuanced subject as well. There's no easy answers. I think we need to use fact-based decision-making and try to remove politics and vitriol as much as possible from the conversation to come up with reasonable solutions to the problem.
Ms. Beckman.
I agree with Mr. Hart as far as listening to community professionals and the advice that they're giving, especially the Central District Health Board as well as the CDC. And especially this year, since we are now on an attendance-based funding versus last year when it was enrollment-based funding. And this is affecting schools across the district, and not only schools, but it is affecting teachers. Teachers are, if they do get sick, they are having to use their own leave time. And it is putting a strain on this community as a whole. So if there's any mitigating measure that can keep our kids in schools as well as our teachers, I believe that is the route that should be taken.
How would you go about ensuring that growth in our community pays for new schools? Ms. Beckman.
I believe that is an issue that would have to be deferred to the state, but I also believe that school boards should come together and work as a board to try to propose issues to the state as what could be done instead of having to rely specifically on levies. And I think that's where you need to communicate with outside organizations to figure that out and really keep those lines of communication open.
Mr. Hart.
Can I have the question again? I had the question.
Question would be, how would you go about ensuring that growth in our community pays for new schools?
I think we have to manage as best as possible to find a way that's fair to the taxpayers. I do think this is not entirely a school board issue in terms of with the state legislator not funding the schools as they should. I am a homeowner. I don't like paying taxes as much as anyone else. You know, we are 51st in the nation for per pupil spending. That's why I volunteer with Reclaim Idaho. I think it's important, the Quality Education Act and getting that on the ballot, that this would give the school districts money to spend as they see fit, which would go down to the school boards and not an administration cost, would be helpful.
A lot of talk concentrates on new schools in the district. How would you go about making sure the old schools in the district are updated and maintained? Mr. Hart.
I think that's a great question. You know, I think part of it is looking at where the needs are in those schools and surveying the needs of those specific schools and what they're needing as you're kind of looking at building new schools and making sure that all needs are addressed as much as possible to most effectively meet all the students' needs across the board, so that the new schools aren't just pulling away all the money from the old schools, that you are making sure that the needs of the older schools are getting funded at the same time.
Ms. Beckman.
I think that's where you need to take a hard look at what is going on with the finances within the school district and look historically at what and where new schools have been built and if there's been a lack of funding for maintenance for schools within the district, if it's like a historical problem. And I think that's where you really need to look at what has been going on in the district, and not just this year, like go back 10 years or more and see where we actually need to rebuild or put a lot of money into keeping students and staff safe with buildings.
What does putting students first mean to you, and how will you do that? Ms. Beckman.
Putting students first, to me, my primary goal is health and safety, given that we are in a global pandemic. So I think that is one that you have to address first, because if you do not have students in school and you do not have educators in school, then what do we have at the moment? And that really affects funding, especially this year. So health and safety is a major concern for me. And it's not only for the pandemic. I mean, we had an incident in Southeast Idaho last year with a shooting, and it's making sure that every school and every administrator and every person within that building is on the same page. If you look at the reports for that incident, there were teachers that were able to do their own thing. Outbuildings didn't even have communications up and running. So it's really taking a hard look at the district and making sure that schools have a good safety plan in place.
Mr. Hart.
I think it's something that teachers do every day, that they do place students first and they're learning. I think parents do it as well. I think you need to listen to all the stakeholders and try to bring them in as equitably as possible to come up with solution for things. Every kid has a unique need, and I think we need to assess what those needs are. And, the school district does that. And to have just people coming together to take care of the kids' needs, I think it's the community's responsibility to do that.
Do you support the proposed operating levy that is on the ballot this November? Why or why not? Mr. Hart.
I do support it. It is needed to keep the schools up and running as they are, especially in this time of a pandemic. It is not time to take away the funding that is necessary to keep schools up and running. It is not the ideal solution for it. And as a taxpayer, I don't love it either. But I think it goes back to the legislature not properly funding public education. So that's more of a state level and less of a district level. But I do support it.
Ms. Beckman.
I also agree with Mr. Hart, and I support the levy. I feel that, putting this on taxpayers is unfortunate, but it's a much needed necessity to keep our schools going, and I support it.
As we go through the questions, then the questions are going to be fast. If you have a question that you have written down, make sure you raise your hand high so we can get that question collected and put into the queue. What motivates you to become a board member who receives no pay, has to donate many evenings, many hours throughout the year in service to constituents who may disagree with whatever your decisions are? Ms. Beckman.
For me, what is motivating me to become a board member is I have the time and I have the capacity to do it. And I believe that I also have the skill set to facilitate in good decision-making, not just for certain members of the community, but all. I am a proponent of listening and a proponent of hearing all the different voices within a district. And I think as a board member, you are working with other board members to come up with the best possible solutions. And I am willing to do that.
Mr. Hart.
Can I hear the question again?
The question, what motivates you to become a board member who receives no pay, has to donate many evenings, many hours throughout the year in service to constituents who may disagree with whatever your decisions are?
It's my love for the community. I grew up here, growing up here, and it holds a special place in my heart, and it always will. I am where I am today because of growing up here. I think it's incredibly important to have a reasonable voice on the board. And it's something I'm passionate about. And it's something that I feel like there's a need for, again, a special education parent to help look at things from maybe a little bit different perspective than sometimes it gets looked at.
With limited revenue, what should the school district be prioritizing in its budget? Once again, with limited revenue, what should the school district be prioritizing in its budget? Mr. Hart.
I think it comes down to retaining teachers and educational support staff is the key. If you don't have the teachers and the educational support staff, you don't have the school. You need to make sure that they are supported, that you are retaining them, that you are not losing them to lack of funding. They deal with a lot, and we've even asked more of them through this pandemic than we ever have. So that when you have teachers out and then you're having to pull over special education staff to work the classrooms, it just puts a strain on everyone that I don't think is sustainable. So I think the key is making sure that your staff and other educational or all educational support staff are paid to retain them.
Ms. Beckman.
I agree that retention for staff is at the utmost importance, and making sure that our teachers and educators and staff are, at school and happy at school. And that is where a lot of our budget goes in the first place. I also believe in technology for students, anything remaining, because technology is just going to keep us going forward. And as we found out with the pandemic last year, having those things in place really helped us going from virtual, going in school, and then anything else the world might throw at us. So putting teachers and their salaries and support staff first, and retainability, and then through technology, I think will help us get through the district.
Besides current attendance, why are you the best candidate for this job? Ms. Beckman.
I believe that I'm the best candidate for this job because of my skill set. I think that I can provide a lot of background in business administration as well as accounting, and also through my combat plans and training experience and working with detailed education plans. And I also have the time and the availability to do it. And I'm a listener. I listen to what people have to say and I take that in, and I really want to make the best decisions that benefit the most people and the best people in our district, especially the students. So whatever we have to come up with to do that, to keep kids in school and keep educators happy, those are the decisions that I'm prepared to make, but we'll also listen to every stakeholder in the community.
Mr. Hart.
I think that most people that know me as a pretty measured, reasonable person that is willing to work in a lot of different situations, is willing to listen to people, is willing to be empathetic to what people are going through. And just that it's just the compassion that I have for the kiddos and for seeing, how important it is to have just to leave a lot of the political stuff at the door and just to make sure that we're serving the kids and not political agendas.
Thank you for the questions submitted here at the in the room, and of course on online. What role does critical race theory have in school? Mr. Hart.
I don't think critical race theory is being taught in our school. I don't think indoctrination is happening in our school. I get that parents are concerned, but I don't think we're seeing it. I consider it to be a distraction from real issues that our district is currently facing. And frankly, it feels like an attempt to erode public trust in education, which I think is damaging. Of course, if there is documented evidence of inappropriate teaching that isn't handled by the district, I'd like to be kept apprised of that and you monitor that situation. But at this time, I don't think it's worth investing time to look into, because it's not an established fact that it's happening.
Ms. Beckman.
Historically, critical race theory has not been taught in K through 12. It's only been in higher education and in law schools for that fact. I think that there was a preemptive measure to get rid of it back in April, and it's an analytical tool. What I do think is from the verbiage that was put into the bill, is that we need to look at the district and our educators and make sure that we are protecting them in current curriculum that they're teaching as to not affect funding, because that is what the bill says, that it will affect funding. So just looking at the curriculum of what has been taught and what is currently being taught is the best way that we can protect our teachers and our students.
Quick follow-up, define inappropriate teaching.
That is a good question. Inappropriate teaching. It's hard to define. It's one of those things that is, hard to define, but when you see it, I feel. I think Idaho creates values in people that they are, if a student was in a class of 30 and experiencing something that was off, it would come to light. And then the community itself would have to look at it and the school board about that.
Go back to Ms. Beckman. What is your view on the West Ada Parent Association? Are you now or were you previously part of this group?
I am not a member of the West Ada Parent, is it the Parent Association?
West Ada Parent Association, as it's written for me.
I am not. It is something that I am new to the district as a parent, and I have been working with our individual teachers. So I've been trying to keep as informed as possible in our own schools, and I am always willing to learn all about any groups within the district to be apprised of their concerns.
Mr. Hart?
I am not.
Okay. What are your thoughts on school choice? Mr. Hart?
I think it's appropriate for some. I think it depends on who your kiddos are and you match it to their personality. So I'm not against school choice.
Ms. Beckman?
I agree. I am also not opposed to school of choice. I think it depends on your household and your kiddos and what is best for them. And as parents of your children and what that their needs are. I am not opposed to it.
Do you believe there is a place for gender identity education in elementary, middle, and/or high school? Ms. Beckman?
I believe this is a hot button topic in today's society, and it is something that needs to be addressed as far as elementary school or middle school. Elementary school, I'm not so sure about, but as a parent of your own kiddos and you know what's going on with them in your own household, I think that we as a district perhaps should have things in place, counselors where they are able to talk to somebody. As far as teaching for elementary school, I would say not until sex education begins that maybe you really start to delve into topics like that.
Mr. Hart?
I guess I would need more specifics on that. I don't know about any specific situation. Can you ask the question one more time?
Do you believe there is a place for gender identity education in elementary, middle, and/or high school?
I think it depends on what you're talking about, education in terms of any of that stuff. But I do think it's one of those things where it's might be somewhat of a distraction away from issues that are prevalent in the school district.
In recent months, the West Ada School Board meetings have been met with social unrest as a result of the politicization of COVID-19 public health protocols. In these meetings, many parents have voiced their disdain towards certain health measures, while student voices remain largely unrepresented. How important is it for the West Ada School District to continue to offer a platform to these parents? How would you give students a bigger voice? Mr. Hart.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important to give students a voice in that. In terms of the parents, I think what they're saying is important to them, obviously. I think you also need to make sure that you're not listening to just the loudest voices in the room. Just because someone is the loudest voice in the room doesn't mean they're the correct voice in the room. I think you've got to listen to everyone and do the best you can. It's a nuanced situation. There's sometimes, the other thing with people's children with special needs, if they're on an IEP and there's a reason they can't keep a mask on, I understand that those kids, they cannot wear a mask. A child with autism maybe can't keep a mask on their face. That's why I feel it's important for the people that they can do it, that they should be wearing a mask to protect the community as a whole. But yes, I feel it's important that you listen to all stakeholders. And I like the point of asking, the children's point of view. Very few people do that. Very rarely do people get that point of view. And I think just as it's important what the parents are saying, I do think it's great to what the children are saying too. And kind of that point as well. And, the city council races mentioned it. There should be more of a community student involvement probably with the board and getting them involved and a connection more there so that you're getting those voices heard. I think that's great.
Ms. Beckman.
I don't know if excited is the word, but I do like that so many parents within our community are voicing their concerns and that they are getting involved in issues that are facing the district. I do feel that there are better ways to communicate and see, what the different voices are saying. And I really believe that we can accomplish that through surveys and actually publishing this data. And it goes back to transparency, because there are many voices within a community, and those voices are also student voices. And I don't feel that we hear from them enough. And they are the product of the school district, and we need to hear from them, whether that's through surveys or a public comment and getting more forums out there where we can have discussions.
Mr. Hart, I'm not picking on you, but you phrase your answers in a way that makes me want to ask follow-up questions. You said we must be certain not to make sure to just listen to the loudest voice in the room. What is your perception of numbers? Do majorities have any role in decision makings with, as far as parents, with decision making from the school board?
Yeah, I think they definitely go into decision making. Yeah.
Should they be represented as far as the decisions that get made?
Yeah, I think they are part of the decision-making process. I think they're one of, a part, like you had mentioned, the students. I think the teachers are an incredibly important part, administrators, scientists and researchers is also important. What public health officials say about certain situations is incredibly important. I think it's a lot more complex than it's often made out to be, that you just follow the majority of parents, or what is called the majority of parents, in decision-making processes. It's been an incredibly scary time for everyone involved here. And I think it's important that, we just make sure that you take everyone's opinions and everything you can to make the best decision you can. And I think that's, as a school board, you're not making that as an individual. You're making that with a group of people to do what's best for your community as a whole and for your students.
Ms. Beckman, same question to you. And we've seen this play out here and across the country. If the feedback you get goes against your recommendation, would you put the feedback ahead of your own recommendation?
If it is what the majority of people within the district, and that includes educators and students and parents, want, then absolutely. But I also believe that those other voices should not be dismissed, and that as a district, we need to come up with solutions that can benefit that group of people as well and make it as safe as possible, especially when you have decisions that are not singular and they are also affecting the health and safety of others.
What, in your opinion, is the maximum number of students that should be allowed for one teacher in an elementary classroom, grades 1 through 8? I think I'm going to go back to Mr. Hart on this one first, because I think I messed up the follow-up, and there's two of you. We'll get there.
Maximum number, can you phrase that one?
Maximum number of students allowed for one teacher in an elementary classroom, grades 1 through 8. Student teacher ratio.
I would have to look at the specific research on that. I'm not sure I have the answer off the top of my head. I don't want to just spout a number, but so I don't know.
No answer. Ms. Beckman.
I would also have to look into further about what is recommended by professionals within the field. I know that numbers that are probably around the low 20s, like anywhere from 22 students to 25, is probably more beneficial versus a classroom that has 36 students. I know for myself that, we had a kindergartner last year and we have one this year, and it is hard keeping them on task. So expecting a kindergarten teacher to do that for 36 plus students, I imagine is very taxing. So to keep those numbers a little bit lower to make sure that we're building good foundations, in my opinion, would be better.
Some school districts and politicians in other states believe that parents should have no voice in school curriculum. How do you see the school's role versus the parental role? Ms. Beckman.
I think as far as the school's role versus parental role, that is where you need to look at what has been historically being taught at the state education level and what is being dictated that we can teach. And then if there is any input from the parents on what they think should be taught, that is when you have open communication, and then you actually need to listen to what the other voices say. But you'll also need to look at current trends and data to see whether it's relevant and whether it is actually beneficial to education as a whole.
Mr. Hart.
Can I hear the question one more time?
Some school districts and politicians in other states believe that parents should have no voice in school curriculum. How do you see the school's role versus the parental role?
I do feel the parents should have a role, and the community in general should have a role, and those standards are community standards. It should be a collaboration, I feel. I think to have an all or nothing answer, or, whether they have no role or any, it's a little divisive. I don't think that there's no solution where you say 100% no parent has any involvement in decision-making or anything like that. So.
In light of the shocking videos we've seen on the internet recently, will you be providing lists to parents of the reading materials that will be provided to students, both required and suggested? Mr. Hart.
No. The reading list, in terms of they could get that from the teacher by involvement and asking the teacher. Are you talking about like a district-wide, I guess? Depends on if you're,
at this point, I'm bound to the question. The question, as stated, says, in light of videos we've seen on the internet recently, will you be providing lists to parents of the reading materials that will be provided to students, both required and suggested?
I think if parents were informed, they would have that list. I don't think, again, it's all or nothing, like you would have to require it. I don't know the videos that you're talking about. So I don't know.
Ms. Beckman?
I also have not seen the videos that you're referencing. If it is required reading at a high school level, is that what you're referring to? If that is the case, then I would imagine that it is being provided through the teacher. And as with anything that goes on in the district, it should also start at the lowest level. That's what it says. So you need to start at the teacher. If you cannot get that list from them, then you need to go to the principal, and then you need to go to the district. But I also believe in transparency. So through the district website, if those things aren't easily identifiable or for a parent to know where to start, then those things should be addressed.
I've been shown a follow-up to this. Lawn boy, a Texas mom says a son found a book about fourth graders' sex in the school library. Parents of students in that school district in Texas have reportedly drawn attention to a book they believe is inappropriate for children and has no place in campus libraries. How would you address this? Mr. Hart.
I think you would have to be given this certain situation in terms of the actual situation, not a hypothetical. We're not Texas. This isn't us right now. And I'd have to hear more of the facts of the situation, what the book was actually, not just a description of the book, before I give a definitive answer on what that would look like, I guess.
Okay, Ms. Beckman.
I would say that if controversial material is found in a library, that it needs to be pulled right away. And then an investigation, so to speak, needs to take place as to see whether it was put there from outside sources, whether it had been there for a while. But I think you would need to do further research to figure out what exactly happened in a situation like that. and then have a discussion about why it was put there in the first place. And if it had been there for 20 years, then why had it been there for 20 years and nobody knew about it, or discussions weren't being taken place to address why is this in our library? Was there a reason to begin with why it was taught? But by trying to find the root cause of a problem first, I think is the best way to go about looking at a subject like this.
Do you believe that students should be taught about our U.S. Declaration of Independence? Do you know any of it enough to recite the preamble?
I'm afraid that I do not, but yes, I do believe that students should be taught the Declaration of Independence as well as a lot of American history. I feel that there's just a lot of information that sometimes we don't know, and learning education is always great. So the more you know, the better you are informed as a citizen.
Mr. Hart.
Yes, I do think it's important, and all civics I think is incredibly important to teach. No, I'm not going to recite it right now.
Okay. Since taxes are levied to pay for education, do you believe there should be more support for homeschooling? Mr. Hart.
If a person wants to homeschool, they can. I know Idaho is well known for its supporting of homeschools. I think the parents have the choice in that if they want to choose that option.
Ms. Beckman?
I believe that given we have been propelled into a world circumstance that was unknown, and some parents did decide to homeschool their children, I believe that resources should be provided, whether that's through education plans to help facilitate that. So I do think resources or knowing where to go for those resources should be put in place for parents who want to homeschool, especially if they've never done it before. Maybe they're not comfortable having their schools and the students in schools this year, and they do opt for homeschooling this year, but want to reintegrate next year. But I definitely believe that there should be a data bank of resources that parents can access.
How do you communicate effectively with a room full of people who are not in favor of positions on masks or vaccinations? Should their students be granted exemptions and allowed in class? Ms. Beckman.
I think given the global pandemic and that decisions that are being made are not singular, meaning that a decision for a student or a teacher not to mask up does not just affect their person, but it actually affects other people that are within 6 feet around them, is what we should be looking at. So when addressing a room full of people who does not agree with that, I would go back to listening to professionals that are offering their medical opinion and medical advice, and through the Central District Health Board and also the CDC. And I have faith that this pandemic is not going to last forever. I know this is hard for everybody, but I also believe that you need to reevaluate situations and not only accommodate, health and safety, but those who also don't want to mask up. Like, what can we do to keep those students in school as well? And I think those are conversations that we need to have. This is not a one size fits all mask, meaning that, everybody does not believe or not want to mask up. But I think you need to hear everybody. And if we're looking at health and safety, you need to look at health and safety for everybody.
Mr. Hart.
I do think you need to allow some exemptions for students depending on their specific needs. Like I said, on an IEP or a 504, it might be necessary. In terms of a room full of people, I think there needs, as long as it's kept respectful, all the way around, that you should, hear people out and their opinions. And, as a school board, that's the joy that you get, is to make sure that you're listening to your constituents and how passionate they are about things, and then making your decisions from there. I think just the tone of everything, of how you're discussing it, is very important, and that you remember that you're talking to people. I mean, I'm just a guy, right, that is a parent of 4 kiddos. that I'm concerned about them as well. I want the best for my kids. I know everyone else wants the best for their kids. I'm not a politician. I'm not great at speaking. But I know that I care about my kids, and I think other parents also care about their kids, and they want the best for them. And I understand their passion for it. I think it's just a matter of the tone and the rhetoric and how you're talking to each other in all of this. And, yeah.
I'm going to combine these two questions. Oh gosh, you're not the only one who's not great at public speaking, sir. What differentiates you from the other candidates running for your zone, and what would you ask your opponent if they were here tonight? Mr. Hart.
Outside of funding, I would say that, can you ask me that question one more time?
What are the differences between you and your opponent, and what would you ask them if they were here tonight?
I feel that I want to remove politics from this. I want to remove the vitriol, and I want to make sure that the school board position is a nonpartisan position. And I think it needs to stay there. And I think there's a reason why it's there. So that there isn't such, the back and forth and the negativity and the hate. Every time I've mentioned running for school board, people are like, really, why would you do that? That shouldn't be the case. Everyone should be, wanting to improve their community. Everyone should want to fight for their kids and do the best thing for their kids to make sure you're doing the right things. So I think I have less of the rhetoric. I think I have more of an even keel. I want to work with the school board as a member. I'm not seeing myself as some rock star in this. I am a community member. I'm a father. I'm a concerned citizen that wants the best for my community and my hometown. In terms of a question, I don't think I have one.
Ms. Beckman.
I think what differentiates me from Angie Redmond is that I want to be a voice for all, and I want to know what everybody is thinking and where the needs are within the district. And I think that by a person that is going to go ahead and maybe not listen to certain voices, I don't think is the best way to go, because we have to listen to students. We have to listen to educators, administrators, support staff. There is a whole group of people that is part of this district, and we need to listen to everybody, and we need to know what is going on. As far as a question for Mrs. Redford, I would want to know, when she says students first or parents first, what does that mean for her? Just because I like knowing what other people are thinking, and, I might gain something from her perspective.
This one is going to take some legislative knowledge. There is a bill, House Bill 377. How do you feel about the language of House Bill 377 that deals with critical race theory? Do you disagree with the bill's language, or do you agree that students should not be taught that individuals are responsible based on their race, sex, for actions committed in the past? Ms. Beckman.
So I read the House Bill 377, and a lot of the verbiage is vague, but that is where we really need to look at what is going on in our district as far as curriculum. That way we can protect our teachers and students alike when it comes down to funding, because funding is used numerous times in that bill, and that is something that does not need to affect the district.
Mr. Hart.
I would agree with Anita. And I think it is just something to be concerned about when it is attached to funding, and what that looks like and what that could look like for school districts. And the schools are already strapped for funds, and what that would look like.
How do you feel about transgender identity among youth? Is it healthy? Should it be encouraged through counseling and curriculum? Mr. Hart.
I don't think that's the responsibility of a person on a school board to decide. I think that's between other people. That's not on, I don't think that's a school board responsibility.
Ms. Beckman.
I do believe that as a district, resources need to be made available to students within the district that are transgender. I believe this is a topic that is not going to go away. And I don't believe that we should pretend it's a non-issue. I definitely believe that resources need to be put in place for any student who needs to talk about it, because suicide among transgender students is a real thing. And this comes back to health and safety for me, making sure that our students feel safe within the school district. So having resources in place where they can talk to somebody is very important.
It is time for your closing statements. Now you can both breathe a sigh of relief. 2-minute closing statements. I will start with Mr. Hart.
Again, I want to thank the Senior Advisory Board for having this and for having us here. I think it's a good opportunity, and there are some important questions that I think are great to hear and to answer, and to be part of this is I think important for anyone running for school board to be here. So I appreciate the opportunity. I think we do want a lot of the same things for our kids. I think it's easy to be divided, but because there are different approaches. Again, I'm not a politician. I never saw myself sitting in front of you guys in the crowd and sharing some of the things and reasons why I want to be a part of the school board. But I'm honored for the support I've received from my campaign, and I will continue working to earn your vote. I am available for any questions. I have a website, brent4westada.com. If you have any questions, concerns, feel free to email me there. And yeah, thank you.
Ms. Beckman.
I also wanted to say thank you for the invitation to be here. It is nice to hear other voices within the community and the questions they are raising, just to figure out, areas of concern. I'm also a parent and a stakeholder in this community. I have my own concerns, but my primary goal as a candidate is to listen to everybody and to see where those views fall in line and how we can be better as a district. I feel that our district is responsible for producing future thinkers, leaders, and active citizens. So I believe that with my background in munitions and combat plans and training, as well as administration and accounting, that I can facilitate that. And I would hope that if you have any questions for me, please feel free to come and ask me. And if you have any other concerns or issues that are of concern to you, I want to know about them. I love hearing what people have to say. And I think just having conversations with people and getting other people's point of view is how we can make this district better. And that's listening to everybody, all the stakeholders, students, faculty, staff, teachers, everybody. We need to hear from everybody. And I think that's how we can go forward and have a better school district.
For those of you watching at home and for those of you who have been a part of this candidate forum tonight, thank you very much for your questions, for your attentiveness, for your watching. Thank you very much to the Meridian Senior Advisory Board. Thank you guys for putting this together. Appreciate it. And again, for our candidates for being present tonight, thank you guys for the uneasy exercise of answering questions on the fly. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Folks, that concludes tonight's forum. Drive safe.